Yeah, welcome everybody. My name is Jan, and today I will talk about player and machine variables in the Mission Pinball framework. What do they do? How or why do you need them? Why should you care? And what do you need to know about them? Hi, I'm Max Quid. How you doing? Yeah, nice to have you here. I saw your recent toy. It looks awesome. Really cool. I really like the mount. And that's a cool mech, and I like the video actually. So I prepared like a small agenda, like always, just to get like some structure into it, and that with this. Yeah, awesome. Yeah, let me know how coins and credits mode works for you. I guess Haggis is using it, so I don't know how much they are testing coin play, but I would love some feedback on how this works and if we should add some features or not. Or I don't know. I mean, I'm not sure if somebody yet put like a machine on location with MPF credits mode. I mean, in general, it should work, and but I would be interested to see if it's actually, yeah, if there are any usability issues or so. But yeah, that would be interesting for me personally. Yeah, and I mean, like credits mode is kind of connected to like machine variables, not to player variables, but to machine variables. And yeah, that's kind of what we will be talking about today. So first we will go into what is state. So what does state mean? Then we will go into like player variables, everything which is tied to a player. Afterwards, machine variables, and then like how to short detour on like how does settings fit into that, and then like I will show like a little bit how it works in MPF, what you can do with machine and player variables. Add a feature to disable coin slides when the game is running. Okay, yeah. I mean, it's probably a good idea to add like a variable for game in progress, or like maybe some conditional variable which you can use in conditional logic, right? And I mean, why would you want to disable coin slides actually? Is that because you got too many credits already, or is it just that you do not want player to add more credits during the game? I mean, I guess in most Stern games you can like add credits anytime, I would guess. I don't think they disabled the coins, right? So yeah, I mean, sure, I guess that would be something. Yeah, probably via okay. Yeah, makes sense. You mean, yeah, I understand. I was wrong. I was thinking about like disabling the coin slots in the machine. I guess some machines can actually disable like the or like like prevent you from putting in more coins mechanically, because like if you already put in too many credits, then they will prevent you. I think that's possible in some machines. But yeah, it makes sense. Makes sense that you do not want to have the slides popping up. Yeah, I guess that would be a nice feature. Let me let me write that down for me, so that I won't forget it. Into my pinball to-do list, which is endless. There's so much which could be done. So variable for game in progress. Yeah, noted that down. Thanks for the feedback. Awesome. That's usually very helpful. I mean, that's yeah. Usually you can hack around is the thing about things, but other people will need this as well, and it totally makes sense to upstream this kind of stuff into the framework. So that's valid feedback. Please keep it coming. Yeah, so like you now seen the again agenda for a few minutes, and you probably uh, you probably now know what's coming, and yeah, so basically, as we are already like in the topic of credits mode, so what is state? So one obvious thing is like it's the current score from a player. That's state. That's usually like basically tied to a player. I mean, if you change players in a machine, it should increase the counter for the second player, and then after the second player drained the ball, the first player should be up again, and his score should be increased. And that's actually how score usually works. Then you got often some mode states. So I don't know that's only valid inside a mode and is voided after the mode is stopped. It's also some kind of state. And then like also state is like the score from the grand champion and also the name of the grand champion. It's also like state which has to be stored somewhere, right? And that's usually like some global state for the machine, and it should also be persisted over like game restarts. So then we got like credits. Credits again is like it's not tied to a player, right? It's just tied to usually to the whole machine, right? Because I mean, often if you like turn a machine off and on again, like your credits are gone, or sometimes not always. Sometimes you got like some grace period, but generally that's not tied to a player. It's like a machine-wide thing. Same for like earnings. That's also something which which is more like kind of audit, but it's also basically just some state which is specific to your machine. It's persisted between like restarts, and that's also state. And like generally, like a lot of stuff is actually state. Um, and as you might like imagine from my few examples, they got like some properties. And in general, in NPF, we basically separate it into player and machine variables. So score is like a player variable, a mode state, usually player specific, unless it's like a global mode. I mean, there are modes which run like all the time, like credits mode. And then there's like grand champion. That's a machine variable, which is also like persists between games. Same for like credits, also machine variable, but not usually persisted. And earnings, it's also a machine variable. So yeah, that's basically I already told you what it is. So a player variable is state per player end game. So that's basically state which is initialized in the beginning of game, or basically when you add the player. So initially you start a game, it has one player. So we initially initialize state for the first player. And I will show you in a minute how you can do that. Like a lot of stuff does this internally. So like counter in NPF might initialize a player variable if it's persisted per player. This is usually like persisted when like when players change. So if the ball ends and the other player comes up, we load the state from the second player, and then after the second player drained his ball, like we load the state from the first player again. And this usually resets after the game, so it's just totally gone after the game. So that's very simple what player variables are, and they work exactly as you would expect. They're generally only available if you got a game running and only like in game modes. So they're like non-game modes, so modes which can run outside the game. Those cannot access player variables. I mean, somehow like they can, but like you cannot have like a counter which is persisted in a player variable in a non-game mode for that reason, because it might be running when there's no player up. So that's basically the limitation, but I mean, I guess it makes sense that you cannot store stuff in player variables if there's no player up. Then we got like machine variables. That's basically global state, and that's global for the whole machine. And a machine variable may persist after machine restart. So when they are created initially, we configure if they are persisted or not. They can also expire. So we can basically say after you set it, it will be available for like 30 minutes or 2 hours or 2 days. I just checked, that's actually not available in configuration for some reason, but it's actually available in code. So like we use this, for example, for stuff like credits, like I think for fractional credits, for example, and those will be available for like a few minutes, and afterwards they will just be forgotten. And that doesn't matter if the machine is actually restarted or not. This is basically a timestamp, and afterwards we will delete this variable. And yeah, and this basically, if it's persisted after restart, that's a flag. So to say, well, it's either persisted or it's not persisted. Yeah, and generally, like as they are global, they are available outside of games. They are available in global configuration and also in non-game modes. There's stuff which is actually not, I mean, like, how do I put it? Some like devices in MPF got like configuration if they are like persistent per player or globally. And yeah, if you say per player, then it's a player variable, otherwise it's a machine variable. And there's some stuff, or at least there has been some stuff, which actually worked in a machine-wide configuration, like in your config.yaml, but not in a non-game mode. So I think we fixed it, but you might still find places where we actually still prevent that. How can you modify machine variables when a game isn't running? For example, to track when a game is running via game started or a game ended. A variable player isn't available in non-game mode. Yeah, that's actually not really possible. So you cannot like access player variables outside of a game. But like for example, like game start. So if you look at like the life cycle of modes, it's first event is mode will start. Then the second one is mode starting. That's basically usually a queue event where you can delay this mode start. And then there's a mode started. And the started event is then basically posted after the mode started. And that's the same for game started. So you could, for example, start your mode on game starting and then hook into game started. That would work actually. I'm not sure. Yeah, you can probably not like put a yeah. It might be tricky with games actually. I would then count it somehow like on base mode or something. So that might actually be a little bit tricky for the game because you would have to look into like the life cycle of game starts. And but I'm not sure. Maybe you can actually hook stuff into game started if the mode is started at ball start. So yeah, maybe it's game started and then ball started. So that might be tricky. But I mean, why would you like I mean, yeah, we will go into this in a minute, but I mean, tracking game started inside the game doesn't make much sense because again, it's always one because like the play variable is 0 at the beginning of the game, and then the game starts, it's 1. So that doesn't make sense. So you probably want a machine variable, but that can be done with a variable player. And I will show you in a minute how this actually works because that's actually available and it's a little bit hidden maybe, but it's relatively easy to use if you know where to look. Yeah, I will show you in a minute. So what else do we have? We got settings. Settings are not like variables, but they are basically for operator selection for your machine, right? So you can say, well, I want this machine in a certain mode that you have to make this shot 3 times to get multi-ball, or I want to disable multi-ball, or there will be only 2-ball multi-ball or something, right? This is what you usually put into settings, and settings internally just set machine variables, and they are also like persisted as machine variables. So on startup, MPF will also just look into the corresponding machine variable, load this as setting, and then that's how settings work internally. It's basically just like an overlay for configuring and setting machine variables at runtime and persisting them after the game. So that's basically how settings work. Just a small detour to it's just basically it's just one place where we actually like use machine variables. Yeah, that's already what I want to tell you here. Now it's demo time, and we will just go into what you asked. So that's my nice IDE here. And now let's pretend. Yeah, let's pretend we want to count the number of games as you asked. So how would we do that? So for example, we got like we got our machine-wide configuration, and I added like a new file here for machine and player variables. So one thing you can do is you can configure machine and player variables. You do not have to do this. This is useful to like basically to initialize them. So for example, now I got my mode starts global. It's one of my as my machine variable, and my mode starts in game is my player variable. And I both initialized those to 0, and I tell it for the machine variable to persist its state between games. And I also tell it that the type is integer. I could also have like a float or like a string or float or integer here. That's basically just for if I want, basically in integer I can increment integers by whole numbers. For floats I can have partial numbers, and for strings I can only basically set this variable. There's no way to add something to a string. So that's only interesting in other places, like when I modify the variable. But I usually want integers. And let's say we want like the number of games started. I guess this is also available like as audits, so there should be like some audit for this, but audits might actually not be available as variable. Yeah, it's probably not. I guess we could also make like audits available as placeholder, and then you would have all those audits which we got in MPF available. Would be relatively easy. That would be something for you. But now let's say we have the number of games started, and what we want to do, what we basically would do is we would put variable player here. Variable player. And does it actually say it's not available in machine configuration? You're right. So we have to put it in some mode. Let's put it into not into service mode, but let's make base mode, I would say, right? So new folder, base config. That didn't work. Delete it, yes. New folder, modes, base config. Damn it. That's also like in the wrong location. I need to put it in root, so I need to put it here. Mode base config. Yeah. Kind of Let me do it in a CLI. Let me do it in a CLI. So make the modes base config. And now it get both base. And now we do base YAML. And we copy this one. It starts when, yeah, I guess we can just keep all the stuff from base mode. And we can now base mode. Base mode doesn't make sense, right? And because base mode is annotated differently. Let's get counter mode. Let's just call it counter mode. And let's rename this one to, yeah, counter mode. And this one should go into configuration and should also be counter mode. Start events machine reset phase 3 game mode false variable player, and now we can say game started. That would be our mode, right? Our event. And now we got like our machine variable with this number of games started, and we say action, and that's add somehow. Yeah, there's basically the autocomplete is a little bit broken here, but there's basically these 4 actions you can choose from. Add is basically adding a value to a player variable, because that's what you usually want. Then you got like add machine, and that's adding to a machine variable. You can also set a variable that's available for player variables or like for machine variables. And we can now say like add machine, and we want to add 1. And that should add like 1 to this machine variable every time when this event is posted. You can also like say we want test event 1. That's basically, let's put like test event 5. That's one of my key mappings, and we will add like 5 to this variable, or let's do set machine. We will just set this variable to 5. Yeah, let's see what happens. So we have both, and it should start. Didn't crash. That's a good sign. And let's see. Look at events. Let's add a ball and start a game. And we should see that like ball started. Oh yeah, here you can see it. Machine variable number of games started 1. So that actually worked. I can now, like, for example, press 5, and that's my event, and it will set this variable to like 5. Yeah, that's good to see, right? Makes sense. And now, like, yeah, now we can like stop the machine, because I cannot drain I probably can drain the ball. See, I drain the ball. We're like on ball 2. Drain again. Yeah, it's probably like, I guess like the default eject time mode is like 10 seconds here. We'll now have to wait like 10 seconds. Run it again. Yeah, it's ball 3. And now we wait until like it's confirmed on the playfield again. And then we should be able to like start another game. Yeah, and Game is over, right? Yeah. And ball is in the trough again. Let's start a game again. And we can now see, I hope that we can see, yeah, number of games started, 6. So that is actually what you wanted, right? I hope. So you can use use variable player to modify machine variables. Another thing which I basically prepared a little bit is, yeah, those other two variables, my mode starts global and in-game. So for my mode here, my creative mode with a creative name, I added like a variable player which does exactly that. So when this mode starts, again on the my mode started event, I add like 1 to this global variable, the my mode starts global variable, and to my mode starts in game. So this is basically the counter per game. And that's basically to the player variable. So then I got like a show player which actually shows the value of those two variables. So you can reference like player variables via current player dot the name of the variable. You can have machine variables like via machine dot my variable name. And we can actually try this. So my mode starts on test event 1. Let's keep binding 1. I will press 1. And we now will see that this is 0. And it went away. Are we in a game currently? Let me see. Yeah, and should stay there. Let's see what happened. Running modes, my mode is running, yeah. So we can stop it again and start it again. Now it's like the count is 1 and 33 is like the global counter, because I already tried it like a few times. And for that reason it yeah, it's already like at 23. So now we can stop the mode again, start it again. It's like 2:24. Stop it again, start it again, 3:25. Stop it again, start it again, 4:26. And now you might be wondering, where does MPF like store this information when I stop the game, right? I can now stop MPF, and now I can do the same thing again. So that like put in a game, ball, start the game, start the mode, and it's 0:27. So how does it actually know this? So how does it know that like it's 27? Stop it again, it's 28. So where does MPF store this? And that's actually in the data directory. You might have seen that. So we can like go into that. So there's like the data directory, and there we got like 2 files here, audits.yaml and machine variables.yaml. And we look at machine variables.yaml. Then we can see now that there are like 2 variables, and one is like my mode start global, and the new one which we just created, number of games started. And they both they both basically persisted between games. That's why they are here. And yeah, that's also their value here. So yeah, that's basically in a nutshell where they are stored. So we could theoretically also edit those. And we can probably also look at them in my IDE here with nice highlighting, and it complains that it's not an MPF config file, but yeah, that's fine. And there's also like audits, which is from the audit mode or the audit plugin, which does stuff like score auditing, average, top, total scores basically, and all the audits all the switches basically. So that's what's in audits. And yeah, machine player variables obviously are not stored because they just void it when the game ends. Yeah, that's basically already what I got like on the general player variables. At the moment, the MPF monitor does not like show variables. All you got is like this, those events, which is player underscore, then the variable name, and then you get the value. And for machine, it's the same, machine underscore, then the machine, or machine var underscore, then the name, and then you get the value, the previous value, and how much it changed, or how, yeah, basically by how much it changed. And that's basically useful for like for acting on it. Because oftentimes, if you set a value, it might be the same value as before, so you might want to look at the change value, for example. Sometimes you care, sometimes you don't. If you just want to like display the current value, yeah, then you don't care that if it changed or not. Yeah, and now we got like something like counters. We can look at that, for example. For example, we got like a counter here, which we used previously, but let's say this counter is also in a mode. We say is start enabled, and let's put the complete value at 100. We count it up with like test event 3. That's also a keep binding, and we say persist state true. Now it will be persisted in the player variable. And now we can also look at it, and maybe we can have a two-player game also, and then we will see that those are basically two variables in the background. So let's do like one ball, start a game, and now we got like player 1, and press start again. Now we should have like 2 players, I think. Let's see. And now we start the mode. Let's look at the events here. And we can now increase the counter, and we can now see that like it has didn't store it in a player variable. This is state. Is there like I would have guessed that it would stay in a player variable. It actually does, but it might not. Yeah, it will not post the event, so you can probably not see it. But we can now see that basically it's like at count 1 and the remaining value is 99. We can now also do like so let's stop the mode, start the mode, stop the mode, start the mode. We got like 2, or like the machine, yeah, the variable like is 3 now here. And now we can drain the ball. Let's see. And now we should say, yeah, now we can see here that player 2 is up. We get the console up, so we can now see player 2 is up. And we can also then start the mode again. And we see that this variable is 0 again. And stop it, start it, like the global counter still increases obviously. But now it basically, it's 2, it's 3, it's 4, it's 5, it's 6, it's 7. And now basically we can go back to the first player by draining the ball, and we are back to player 1, ball 1, and we can start the mode, and now it's like 4 because that would be the next value for the first player. So you can see that this is per player. Yeah, we can also do the counter again, remaining 98 here, and we can go like to the other player, start the mode, and now we got the count from the second player again, and increase the counter, and it's now remaining 99. And we can press it a few times. Let's do like remaining 80, drain the ball, start the mode again, and yeah, for the first player it's still 97. So it's basically tracked separately, And this is the difference between player and machine variables already. Yeah. So basically that is what I wanted to show. If you got any questions, I mean specific problems you want to solve, or what you want to do with player, machine variables, or placeholders, feel free to ask if you want. I've got a few state questions. Have you ever considered adding a list as a supported variable type? Not sure if that would be too complicated to incorporate to the config syntax, but sometimes I find myself wanting a list of values instead of having to enumerate a bunch of separate variables. So what's your list? Interesting idea. To be honest, we didn't so far. Technically, it's possible. So like, for example, counters, the reason why counters do not emit events is because internally they set like a list into a player variable. And then like you can still access it, but like in events, it would basically blow up event parameters. So we do not post these events anymore. So sure, we could do this. You can access them with like with brackets or with so you can do stuff like this technically. So 0, 1, 2, 3, that's supported in MPF. So that's totally supported. But like currently there's no config interface to set those kinds of variables, right? But we could obviously have like something like here action append, I guess, and append machine, and then you could like append an element to a list that would technically work. Yeah, I'm certain that it would work. So yeah, would be possible. I guess then we also need stuff to iterate lists, which might be complicated in some places, but I mean, why not? You can obviously do this in code already, but not like in configuration where, yeah, with this kind of variable players. But yeah, in code you can. So yeah, it's something we can do. Hope that answers the question. What are some strategies if you want to subtract, multiply, or divide variable? That's also a good question. So basically you can use any math the following way. So instead of like saying add 1, we could also do something like set, and then we can, I think, yeah, no, I think it's fine. I think we can have arbitrary placeholders here. I guess let's try it, but I'm pretty sure that we can. So what we can do is like we can use this variable and reference itself. So we just reference current player, my mode starts in game, and now we can multiply it by 2, for example. Obviously we would then basically initialize it with 0, because if we multiply 0, we want to initialize it with 1. If we multiply 0 by 2, it will be always 0, right? So this way we can reference the variable and then multiply it by 2. You can, I mean, you can use value syntax. So you're right under one condition, and that's if value is basically in this event. So if you got something like value here, that will be basically a parameter on that event, which basically triggers the event player. So you could basically base it on the change of this one. So you could have something like player and then this variable, and then you could trigger something when this variable changes. But I mean, changing the variable when it changes is will end like in an endless loop. So that might not be the best idea here. But in other places, it's very common to use like value, like the keyword value. But let's try this. I'm 95% certain that this will work. Not 100, but 95. So add a ball, start the game. Let me get up the events view here. Yeah, so let's start the mode. And now it's the value is already machine. Did it work? Not sure. Stop. Start. Machine var changed, but my player variables didn't change. At least it's not working for some reason. The current player, my mode starts in game multiplied by 2. Maybe there's something like template. I'm not sure. I would have to look it up. Let's see. But I think I'm pretty sure that it's possible. We just have to find out how. Let's look into. I guess the easiest way is to look into source code. So we can now start my IDE. It's not that fast, but it will come up soon. Only a matter of minutes usually. Okay. And what we want to know is, yeah, now it will load some Rust. Finally. And we want variable player. And still indexing. But here we go. So what does it do? It does stuff. And we got like something set machine, get machine. Yeah, that's fine. Pass conditionals. Conditionals also not what we want. We want like I would have guessed that this worked. So if it evaluates the placeholder, yes, it definitely does that. So integer evaluate, yeah, it should do this. So what I did should work. Now let's find out why it doesn't. So it should definitely be int. Let's just put +2 or something. So let's put some brackets around. Maybe also like quote it. But that's not technically needed. So current player, yeah. We do not need those brackets or something. So let's see what happens if we do it this way. Let's try. Yeah, now that works. I think like the initialization of this variable doesn't work. Did we do this right? No. Yeah, okay. I did exactly what I told initially. So I initialized this variable to 0, and now we multiply it by 2, and that's still 0. So if we put this to 1, then it should just work. Let's see. So just the basic stuff. So now we say like we multiply this number, and it doesn't make sense now semantically, but and we will just multiply my mode starts in game by 2 every time. And this should just work. Add a ball, start a game, and it's at 1. That's the initial value. And now we can stop it and start it. Now it's 2. Makes sense. Stop it, start it again. It's 4. Stop it, start it again. 8, 16, 32, 64, and so on. So actually we can use any arbitrary math here, and by that you can also like reference other variables. So you can reference like placeholders for like state machines, counters, whatever you want. Basically everything is possible here, and this is basically evaluated at this point. It needs to set, yeah, right. If you want to set a machine variable, obviously it needs to do set machine, but it's actually exactly the same as set player. And you can use, basically you can reference them vice versa. If you're like not inside the game, then there won't be like current player, and it might actually crash. I'm not 100% sure, but I guess that it would crash if you reference a player variable outside of a game. But you can definitely reference machine variables from inside your game modes. If you divide an int, it has a reminder. Does it round it up? Yes. So it casts. So technically, it casts it to an int. So now it will round it down. So basically, if it's 1 dot something, it will be 1. Doesn't matter if it's above 1.5 or below 1.5. So it will be always rounded down because it's basically casted. You can also like use type float here. So you can, for example, have a float, and we can say it's 1.5. And now it would do floating point math. So that would also work. Let's see. Start the game, start mode. It's 1.5. Actually, inlining the dot in my segment display works. Stop it, start it. It's 3. Stop it, start it. Yeah, 6. Yeah, it doesn't. It's not nice with 1.5, but actually the math works. What would be a technique for sharing state between players? Like if you wanted to incorporate a co-op mode. Yeah, actually, then you have to use machine variables at the moment. So that's totally possible. And all you would have to do is basically on game start reset your machine variable, because otherwise it would carry over between games. So you could, for example, like my counter, basically you would do something like base mode. So base mode starts at game start, and in base mode you would basically set this variable to some value, and then you can use it in multiple modes for any player. And on the next game, it would basically just reset the variable. So that would be the easiest way to do this. Otherwise, it would be tricky. Then, like if you want to have multiple parties, then it becomes like a little bit more tricky, right? So if you say player 1 and 3 and 2 and 4 and something, then it becomes a little bit more tricky. Then you need 2 machine variables, which where you have to think about which one is referenced at which point, right? But otherwise, yes. What about short states? Shots only if you basically set persist to true. If you set like persist state true here in a counter, for example, then it's persisted inside like a player variable. If not, it runs inside this mode. But it will also basically be voided when this mode stops. So in this case, you would have to have like counters which run like in a mode which does not stop, and that might be actually tricky if you have basically 2 parties, right? and you have player 1 and 3 and 2 and 4, that would be a little bit tricky, because then you want to increase the first counter for player 1 and 3 and the second counter for player 2 and 4. So that is possible with some conditional logic, but it's probably not super nice in MPF at the moment. And for this, we would basically have to have some additional variable type for, like, I don't know, party variable or co-op variable, which could be added if that's of general interest. That should be possible. If it's only a few things, then I would use some mode which runs all the time and just track it in this mode. It's not as nice, but it works. So yeah, I guess TNA made this popular, right? And now even Stern does it. So everybody wants co-op gaming now, and I mean, why not? Makes sense. I noticed that there's a player option in the variable player. Are there any restrictions, tricks, traps on setting a player variable that is not the current player? No, you can do that. So actually, you can do for example, we can do set here, and then this autocomplete is unfortunately not working, but you can then say player 2, set this to value 1. So that totally works. Just make sure that the player actually exists, otherwise it might run into problems. Not sure. Let's see what it does if we run no, it will just add a warning to your log if the other player is not existing. So if you set something on player 4 and player 4 isn't existing, then it will just complain in your log. So it will not crash. So that's, yeah, should just work. It will basically silently fail if the player isn't there. So basically what you can do is for the co-op question, that's also something you could do. So you can actually say, well, I decide that for player 1 and 3 I track it on player 1, and for player 2 and 4 I track it on player 2. That would definitely work. So that might be also an option, which is even a little bit nicer than using machine variables here. And generally, that's, I don't know why we actually added it, but I guess somebody wanted it, and there are use cases where you want to add set a bit for another player, or add some score for another player or something. I mean, there are a lot of fun rules which haven't been explored yet in Pinball, so why not? So that's also available. In general, this is basically an abstraction for the most common stuff, I would say. And if you want to have really specific stuff, that's not a problem. You can just write it in code yourself, or write additional abstractions. And maybe I will do something on custom modes, maybe on next week, Wednesday, because you can also modify machine and player variables in code. It's really easy, and that gives you more flexibility if you want to do stuff which doesn't work out of the box in MPF. That might also be interesting for a lot of people, but I know that especially for designer type developers in MPF, that's sometimes a little bit scary to work in code. But I will show you that it's so once you understand how this works, it's relatively easy to do most of the things. Not everything, that there's hard stuff obviously, but a lot of stuff can be done really, really easily. And you can do it totally. yeah, that would be probably something for the next stream, I guess. So yeah, if you got any more questions, keep them coming. Otherwise, we are at nearly exactly 1 hour. So for some magical reasons, we usually run out of questions after like 1 hour. I don't know if it's intentionally or if you just don't if you if you just want to do other stuff. I mean, yeah, fine. That's basically what I wanted to tell. And if you got like wishes for what I should show, like also in general, not necessarily today, then please let me know. And yeah, until then, I wish you like an awesome remaining weekend, awesome Sunday tomorrow, a nice evening today if you're in the US, nice night if you're in Europe, and yeah, probably a nice morning if you're in Australia. um, and then yeah, keep building some pinball, keep on hacking, and have a lot of fun. And yeah, see you soon, guys, in one of the chats, or maybe on Wednesday, or like on a forum or on Pinside. Yeah, there are plenty of channels. So until then, see you guys.